I like that song. I like that song because it is very positive and hopeful about marriage. I'm kind of hard pressed to find more recent songs that express the same sentiment. I don't think I could have found a nice Eminem song for this. But that's really the subject of the passage we're going to be looking at today in Song of Songs. So I've titled it, In Praise of Marriage. Open your Bibles, if you would, to Song of Songs, chapter 3. We'll begin in verse 6. Looking at the overall structure of the Song of Songs, some scholars believe that they're simply a collection of love poems that are really not connected to one another, just kind of a collection of isolated love poems. But as I've been reading through and kind of looking at the overall structure, I'm convinced that that's not at all what's going on here. There are themes that are laid out in the early part of the book that are brought back in and continue to resonate throughout the book. I think it forms one cohesive kind of a story. And we started out at the beginning with the beginning of love between this woman and the man. And actually, she kind of takes the initiative in calling him and inviting him into this relationship. And they're talking about building a home together. That's the beginning. And then in chapter 2, he shows up at her house and invites her to come out and spend the day with him in the countryside. And her friends advise caution. So she says, you know, we don't want to spoil our love by going out unchaperoned and maybe getting ourselves into trouble. So she turns him away, but affirms her love of him. I am his, he is mine, but wait for the right moment. For now, go. And that leads to the section we're in right now, which is a series of dreams. And I believe that there are 4 dreams in the kind of the middle part of the Song of Songs. We had the first dream last 2 Sundays ago, last time we were looking at these, where it's basically a nightmare, and she has this nightmare that she's lost him. That because she turned him away, because she said, wait, that she's lost him. And in the dream, she's frantically searching for him everywhere throughout the city and cannot find him. She's lost him until at last she finds him and brings him to her home. And everything in the closing of that dream resonates with what her mother has built, her mother's home, her mother's bedroom where she herself was conceived. And there's this idea in that dream of what she wants us to build what her mother had. And this leads us to the second dream, which is the longest of the dreams. And the most expansive of the dreams. And really, almost I feel like this passage is kind of the heart of the Song of Songs. And in this dream, we begin very dramatically. It's try to picture this as if it were cinema. Try to think of this as if this were a description of how you're going to lay out a movie. So she continues telling her dream and says, what is that coming up from the wilderness like columns of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and frankincense with all the fragrant powders of a merchant? So in the distance, we have these columns of dust rising up, and it's what you would expect in the southern region south of Jerusalem, where it's very dry and arid. If you had a caravan of people coming in, they would raise up clouds of dust as they're approaching, and that's kind of the image, but there's something different about this group, because these are clouds of perfumes, myrrh and frankincense and all the fragrant powders that a traveling merchant would have. So this is something in the distance showing up, and there's these aromas associated with its approach. And finally, we're told what it is. Maybe as it approaches, it gets close enough that we can make out the figures. Behold, it is the litter of Solomon. Around it are 60 mighty men, some of the mighty men of Israel, all of them wearing swords and expert in war, each with his sword at his thigh against terror by night. So the description is the person approaching is King Solomon. and he's being carried on his royal litter by people, and he's surrounded by 60 elite warriors. These aren't mall cops. These guys are tested, hardened warriors. They're the elite warriors of Israel that surround him, and they are there for protection against the terrors of the night, any bad thing that might happen. King Solomon made himself a carriage from the wood of Lebanon. He made its posts of silver, its back of gold, its seat of purple, its interior was inlaid with love by the daughters of Jerusalem. Some translations might say they're inlaid with leather. There are kind of two, the linguists debate how that should be translated. Either one of those probably fits well. So he's on this royal carriage that's bringing him in, and it's made of all these costly, beautiful, precious materials. And as the woman in Song of Songs continues to tell, now she calls her sisters and her friends, and these are her consistent friends throughout the book of Song of Songs, the daughters of Jerusalem. Here she refers to them as daughters of Zion. And again, maybe it's just this image of all the grandeur and glory that's associated with this King Solomon with all of this wonderful surrounding coming with him. Now we're talking daughters of Zion, which is kind of the poetic way to say Jerusalem. Go out, O daughters of Zion, and look upon King Solomon with the crown with which his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding, on the day of the gladness of his heart. It's not until this moment that we realize this is a wedding scene. King Solomon is marching in all his glory, and all of a sudden we find out he's marching into his wedding. Notice again how she says his mother crowned him with this crown, maybe a crown of laurel leaves, something like that, on his wedding day. Remember how in the previous dream it ended with her bringing him into her mother's chamber and her mother's home. She has this very clear idea that their mothers have been a key part of their own identity in their relationship. And you may be saying, well, what is Solomon doing here? I thought her love was a shepherd. Solomon's no shepherd. He didn't care for sheep one day in his life. His father did for a bit. But Solomon never tended sheep. Some people read this as we have two suitors competing for this woman's affection. You have King Solomon competing with a shepherd. I don't think that's the way this reads at all, because she is identifying this as the object of her love, and their love language back and forth continues. I don't think she's debating between two figures. I think this is actually her shepherd. Have you ever been in a dream where somebody is something else? And there's something about that. People kind of morph into something different. I think what's happening is in this dream where she's thinking of her wedding day with this shepherd, in her dream he is elevated into this glorious stature of a man. He becomes, in the dream, King Solomon himself. Now, King Solomon is not known as the most spiritual of the kings of Israel. David would take that. But he was known as the wealthiest and as the most revered by neighboring nations, as the one who was crowned with the largest amount of glory and honor and accolades. So if you're going to look for a figure to say, this is what in my dreaming mind's eye my beloved shepherd is, he's like King Solomon himself. And I think we have in this dream sequence this idea that marriage itself elevates those who participate in it. It's sad the culture we live in is so jaded and so cynical about marriage that oftentimes we have whole situation comedies whose basic premise is to make fun of marriage. And they run for years. I remember I always hated, this will date me a bit, but I always hated Married with Children. I hated that show because of how it just tried to make marriage out to be some kind of farce. And marriage is not some afterthought the way many people today treat it. Something you do after you've tried everything else you wanted to do, and it's just something you tack on to the end of a mismanaged relationship. Marriage is not an afterthought. It's not a piece of paper. It's not something you do just to get your parents off your back. Marriage was instituted by God Himself in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. Marriage is the most sacred oath you can enter into with another human being. And it is the oath, according to God's instructions, that opens the pathway for you to begin sharing life without reservation. Every aspect of unity is opened up by this oath. And the goal of that marriage oath is to open the path to two becoming one. A fusion of two lives. There's no higher relationship we can have as human beings than the marriage relationship. It's true. Oftentimes we fall short of what God wanted for us in marriage. Oftentimes we don't know or we don't want to do what God asks us to do, and we either through ignorance or disobedience make a mess of things. But let me tell you, that doesn't mean that marriage was a bad idea. And God wants to redeem these relationships. And He wants us to discover, if we will pursue them with a trust in Him and letting Him guide us through it, and you have the joy and the delight of two people committed with God to this. Marriage is a thing of wonder. And it elevates those who participate in it. It makes us better. Now He begins to speak, and he praises her beauty. Now, I told you, I don't think this is Solomon. I think it's the shepherd. Pay attention to how he praises her beauty and try to think, is this the language of the king who sits in the palace, or is this the language of a shepherd? Okay? Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. He consistently does that. He calls her beautiful to begin these inventories of love. And he always repeats it. He can't say it just once. He has to say it twice. You're beautiful. And he begins, your eyes are doves behind your veil. And there they are, ready to get married. She's got her wedding veil on, but behind the veil, he can see her eyes. Your eyes are doves. And he's made that comparison before. And a dove is an animal that speaks to innocence and a simple grace and elegance. There's something pure and real about the beauty of a dove. It's unaffected. It's not somebody pretending to be anything. It's just an ease and a natural beauty. He consistently, he describes her as a dove. He describes her eyes as a dove repeatedly. He says, your hair is like a flock of goats leaping down the slopes of Gilead. You might think, that is the weirdest compliment I've ever heard. If I'm dating somebody and he says my hair looks like a bunch of goats, that might be the end of it, But Hebrew poetry tries to paint a picture that has certain emotions associated with it. So think of him as a shepherd. Think of his life tending flocks and the idea of these beautiful green slopes in Gilead. This is in the northern areas on the other side of the Jordan where there's enough rainfall that the slopes are covered in green grass. And you've got these beautiful slopes and this flock of black goats leaping down the slopes. To him, that's a thing of beauty. That to him, that just warms his heart. He says, that's what I think of when I look at your hair. And I picture maybe wavy hair, black cascading down her back. That's what he's trying to paint here. That's what I think of when I see your hair. It reminds me of that image. It gets even weirder, I guess. Your teeth are like a flock of shorn ewes that have come up from the washing, all of which bear twins, and not one among them has lost its young. And you, again, I don't know that I would say take notes because it would It would require a lot of explanation for somebody to accept a compliment like this from you. But let's try to take it apart. Again, this is the image. When you were going to take the wool off of sheep, you would take them down to the water. You would wash them to get the wool as clean as possible, and then you would shear the sheep. You would take off the wool. And when you had just shorn the sheep, you cut off all the older hair that's on the outside that may have yellowed a little bit and gotten a little bit dirty. Even if you wash it, it's still a little, not quite pure white. But once you shear all of that off and the lamb is newly shorn, the wool has been washed, it's been shorn off, and they come out of the water, they're pure white. It's blinding almost. And he says, that's what I think. He's saying your teeth are white. And this is what I think of, that image. The whitest thing I can think of is when we've just shorn the ewes and they're coming out of the water. Not only that, he's saying, your teeth, you don't need braces, and you're not missing any of them. You're not missing any teeth, because if your teeth are like these ewes coming up out of the water, each one has a twin. So you don't have one tooth here and the one next to it is gone. They're all there. Every matching pair is where it should be. And it's this beautiful pastoral way of painting a picture of the things that are dear to his heart and how he connects them with her. Your lips are like a scarlet thread, and your mouth is lovely. Your cheeks are like halves of a pomegranate behind your veil. And again, he's describing this exquisite fruit and a scarlet thread, which would be a beautiful type of thread. He's describing things in his life that he considers beautiful and that evoke admiration and wonder in him. Your neck is like the Tower of David. Again, if you're going to use these, be sure you explain what you're saying, okay? Your neck is like the Tower of David, built in rows of stone. On it hang 1,000 shields, all of them shields of warriors. Now, we don't know archaeologically of any structure called the Tower of David, but what's being described here is a tower which would probably be used to keep things safe, to see from the distance if armies were approaching. And the idea is this tower is decorated with stonework, and on that stonework hang 1,000 shields of warriors. And maybe he's describing her neck as something regal and majestic, and describing the stonework with the shields on it as some kind of a necklace that she might be wearing. But the image he's painting here, David was the king that captured the imaginations of people. You go around killing Goliath with a sling and 5 stones, and people start asking you, how did you do it? And you know what David's answer was? God gave me the strength to do this. And under his leadership, the armies of Israel really understood themselves as the armies of God. And they were able to go out in that confidence and do amazing things. One man with a spear stood in a field and killed 300 enemies. These kinds of warriors came and pledged their allegiance to David. And they were not all Israelites. They were Hittites, and people from a lot of neighboring nations came and became a part of the people of Israel and came to know Yahweh because of David. And they would come, and one way of showing that you have sworn your fealty to this king is to hang your shield on his tower. He's saying, you're so beautiful. Your neck is such a thing of beauty that 1,000 warriors would pledge their loyalty to you. Your 2 breasts are like 2 fawns, twins of a gazelle that graze among the lilies. She's compared him to a gazelle earlier. This animal that is sleek has an innate elegance. You know, you don't think that when you say donkey, right? But you say gazelle. And this animal doesn't practice, but every step the animal makes is a thing of beauty, right? And she's described him that way. He uses this image to describe her breasts of all things. Now, again, he's not painting a picture of what they actually look like, misshapen and furry. That's not what he's talking about. But think of what he's associating emotionally with this. Try to picture two twin baby gazelles curled up next to each other sleeping. Now, that's not an image of just lust or that's a very peaceful image and an image of something beautiful. And there's even the idea of something innocent and pure. These are the things he's associating with her. He says these gazelles graze among the lilies. And if you paid attention a couple of weeks back or 3 weeks back when we had that passage where he invites her to go out into the countryside with him, and she says, thanks, but not right now. We need to be patient. And this is what she says in that passage. He says, come with me to the countryside. And she says, I belong to you, you belong to me. You graze among the lilies. And she paints this serene picture. In other words, the idea, let's be calm for a moment. And she says, until the day breathes and the shadows flee, go out into the mountains. She sends him away. And basically the idea being, it's not time yet. The day has not come for this level of intimacy in our relationship. Let's be patient. That's kind of what happens before. Now we come to this when he's talking to her in her dream, and this is their wedding day, and this whole thing is brought back. He begins with this gazelles that graze among the lilies, and then says, until the day breathes and the shadows flee, I will go away to the mountain of myrrh and the hill of frankincense. So in the dream, he's repeating back to her the words she told him. And he's saying, until the moment is right, I leave just as you requested of me. But again, this time it's the mountain of myrrh, the hill of frankincense. But he continues on from there, and what follows is another invitation for her to join him. So it's kind of backwards from the earlier one. The earlier one, he has the invitation, and then she says, wait until the day breathes. And he says, I've waited until the day breathes, and come, because now is the moment. Now the time has come for the kind of intimacy we've been talking about. You are altogether beautiful, my love. There is no flaw in you. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Come with me from Lebanon. Depart from the peak of Amana, from the peak of Senir and Hermon, from the dens of lions, from the mountains of leopards. In this dream, her shepherd has become King Solomon. As he's speaking to her, she's almost otherworldly too. He beckons her to come to him from the distant northern regions. If you've been to Israel, you know that when you get up north, there's where the big high peaks are. And what in the land of Israel we call mountains are really not mountains, they're hills. If you get to Jerusalem and expect mountains, you're going to be really disappointed. There aren't mountains. And even Mount Carmel is really not that big. But you get far enough north, you get up toward the region of Lebanon where these deep forests of cedars are, and there's abundant rainfall, and you have these majestic peaks. He describes Senir and Hermon, which are two names for the same mountain peak. That's the highest peak in northern Israel. Anytime you're anywhere in Galilee, you can see it up there to the north. It's this snow-capped mountain peak. Their pagan neighbors thought that that's where the gods and goddesses came from. And he's almost painting this picture as if she is this otherworldly figure. He can't believe she is his. He can't believe she is with him. And he is beckoning her to come from these mountain heights. And it's almost like she's a goddess or she's otherworldly. Almost like the lady in the lake in Arthurian legend, something like that. Come and join me. So again, we have both participants in this, in the dream, are elevated to this high status. And there's this image of dens of lions and mountains of leopards. And maybe he's thinking of her friends who are there kind of guarding her from making stupid decisions and getting herself into trouble and causing problems for their love by rushing ahead too quickly. Or maybe he's thinking of guardians like her own brothers. And as we get further into the book, Song of Songs, her brothers appear and they're very concerned about her chastity. There's this idea that there are guardian figures in her life, and that's a good thing. But he beckons her to come and join him because this is the wedding day and the time now is right. You have captivated my heart, my sister, my bride. You have captivated my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. How beautiful is your love, my sister, my bride. How much better is your love than wine, and the fragrance of your oils than any spice. If you remember from the opening chapter, that's the way she addresses him. She talks about how his kisses and his love is better than wine. And she talks about how his name is like a wonderful fragrance. He's repeating the same things back to her. You may wonder, why is he calling her my sister? There's nothing weird going on here. This isn't incest or anything like that, but this is a way of referring to her as a fellow Israelite, as somebody of the same clan or the same people. And this is a consistent thing throughout the Bible, both in the Old and the New Testaments, we are told. We who belong to God, we who have committed our hearts and lives to Him, we are not to enter into marriage with somebody who is not belong to Him, who is not a part of His people. And the reason is simple. If you belong to God, your life belongs to Him. He is your Lord and God. And your primary commitment in life is to live life as He guides you to. Somebody who does not have that is going to be moving in a completely different direction in life than you are. And if the goal of marriage is for two to become one, something's going to have to give. At the very least, you're going to face a very fundamental difference of where you're trying to pull the marriage, where you're trying to go with the marriage. So God consistently throughout the Bible tells us that we should not marry outside the faith. Now, don't hear me wrong. He's not saying that you should not marry outside of your culture or outside of your race, anything like that. We are all one human family. There's no difference on those counts. But in terms of your heart, and what your relationship with God is, if you're going to pursue marriage, it has to be with somebody who has also committed their life to God. Without that, you're not going to be able to reach the level of intimacy that God wants for you. So throughout this, he refers to her. And every time you see him say that, my sister, he's saying, you share my faith. You share my walk with God. We are fellow Israelites. And he says, you've captivated my heart. Your love is better than wine, and wine may gladden the heart. The Bible talks about that. Wine may alleviate the stresses and the discouragement of life momentarily, but love is so much better than that. The love of another human being in this way is so much superior to that. Your lips drip nectar, my bride. Honey and milk are under your tongue. The fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. Again, everything about her reminds her of something about the country he so loves. You smell like the land itself, the deep forests of the north. He talks about her kissing her and her lips and her tongue, and uses the words milk and honey. Do you know where else in the Bible we hear talk of milk and honey? You know, as in a land that flows with, right? Isn't that the language that God used to describe to Israel? This is the provision I am making for you. I am bringing you to a land that will abundantly provide everything you need. A land that flows with milk and honey. And He's using that language to describe her. He's associating those images with her. And this is the idea of marriage. There is, in a very real sense, in the marriage relationship, a profoundly satisfying provision of God for us. God can use that other person to very deeply provide for our souls and our hearts. He ends this praise of her by saying, "A garden locked is my sister, my bride, a spring locked, a fountain sealed." So he says, you're this exotic garden, beautiful, everything you could want is in it, and you're locked up. He's saying this to her on their wedding day. What he is saying is, you have remained chaste until this moment. You're so beautiful. And one of the things that is so beautiful about you is that you have guarded yourself for this moment. Your shoots are an orchard of pomegranates with all choicest fruits, henna with nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, with all choice spices, a garden fountain, a well of living water, and flowing streams from Lebanon. So she is both this exotic garden that has everything you could ever want. She is also the spring that feeds that garden. She is also the spring that waters and gives life to that garden. Now she responds, "Awake, O north wind, and come, O south wind, blow upon my garden, let its spices flow. Let my beloved come to his garden and eat its choicest fruits." Things have changed a lot since the day before she went to sleep and began having these dreams. Now in the dream, it is her wedding day, and the time for holding off, the time for reserving a part of yourself from the other has passed. Marriage is a wonderful thing when you enter into it with something to discover. When you enter into it with something to give each other that you haven't given yet. That's what she's describing. Now the time has come. So yes, now is the time for the fragrance of who I am to be fully made available to my beloved. Everything about me, I open up. And marriage is about this unreserved giving of one to the other. We give everything we have and everything we are to the other. We hold nothing back. And the moment in which we enter into and begin that fully opened, full disclosure relationship is the wedding. Let my beloved come to his garden and eat its choicest fruits. One of the wonders of marriage is that God has let us know that's the moment where you don't have to hold back. You don't have to feel guilty or ashamed about sharing everything you've got with the person you love. That is the way God designed you to work. There's nothing to be ashamed of. There's no reason to hold back. I came to my garden, my sister, my bride. I gathered my myrrh with my spice. I ate my honeycomb with my honey. I drank my wine with my milk. So he has accepted the invitation and the marriage has taken place, and he's talking about fully enjoying what they have been reserving for each other, fully giving themselves one to another. That is what is meant to happen. I am missing a slide here. Let me find the verse very quickly because I know there's more to this. His final words turn to the party. And you know, in the ancient Near East, weddings were several day-long events. And it was basically people gathered and feasted for a week. Yes, you consummate the marriage, but that's not the end of the marriage. You continue to host your wedding guests for 7 days. So he turns his attention to the wedding guests and says, "Eat, friends, drink, and be drunk with love." Now, if there are things you want to get drunk with, I would suggest to you that love is much better than alcohol. And it's great to allow ourselves to fully give ourselves to this and to be intoxicated with the beauty of it. Again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that marriage is the moment at which you have reached the pinnacle of life. It's not. It's the starting point for this relationship. It's the starting point for a marital relationship, which requires some prep work leading up to it and requires this sacred oath to seal it. And once that has happened, you begin the process of discovery. You give yourselves freely one to the other. You hold nothing back, and you begin to discover together what it means to love each other. And that is something you spend the rest of your life delving into. That is something you spend the rest of your life figuring out how to do. I forget the name. Who's the guy that wrote, Sam, who's the guy we went to see at Prestonwood that talked about marriage? Gary Thomas, thank you. I want to give credit. He talked about marriage, and he said, marriage is not like a Tonka truck. You know, a Tonka truck, it's a great toy, man. They're indestructible. You know, you move it around, and this is what you can do with a Tonka truck. And you can put stuff in it and do this, and then dump it out and do this. But that's all you can do with a Tonka truck. He said, no, marriage is like a set of Legos. And the idea being that you're constantly reconfiguring and rediscovering and finding out new things. So marriage is not the end. Marriage is not the goal. It's the starting line for this life. And there are many challenges and many difficulties along the way. But I want to remind you today, don't buy into the cynicism. Don't buy into the idea that somehow this idea was a failed idea. God knew what he was doing when he set this up. And marriage, if we understand his word correctly, is to be preceded by chastity. It's to involve a complete, unreserved giving of everything we have to one another. Some of you are in marriages. And I think it's good for us to remember God's image of what it is we're doing. We are binding two lives into one. We're delighting in one another. And sometimes we can lose our way along the way and get discouraged. I want to encourage you, if you are married, to latch on to what God has called you to. And if things have gotten a bit off track, find your way back. Find your way back to that wonderful garden that lacks nothing, to that wonderful place of provision. Some of you, marriage is not for you. God has called you to a life of celibacy. I want to remind you, that means that sex is not a part of your life. You're not to engage in that. But many of the principles we have here in terms of what love does in our lives, you don't have to be in a marriage relationship to experience and pursue love in your life. Sex is not the only way, despite what people might say to you, to show love. There are many, many, many different ways to show love. In fact, the person who showed more love than anybody has ever shown never had sex. Jesus. He came and lived a celibate, sinless life and died on the cross. So don't feel like if marriage is not what God has called you, you've somehow missed out. If that's your calling, then that is what God wants for your life. Don't ever be ashamed of that. But be sure that we're doing everything the way God has told us to. That we are encouraging marriage to be what it's meant to be, and that we don't use anything in our life to somehow denigrate or somehow take away from what God has called us to. Young people who still haven't begun to be active sexually, let me encourage you now. You are in time to really discover fully everything God intends for you in terms of your sexuality. Trust Him. Do things His way, not the way your friends at school tell you to do it. They don't know. They're as clueless as you are, more so. Trust God, who made you, who knows how you work inside and out, and have the courage to do things His way, even if nobody else around you seems to want to do it that way. Those of us who are older, who are already sexually active, I don't care what your past is. You may have done things completely opposite to the way God expects you to. That doesn't matter now. What I want to ask of you is, what does God want from you now? Where does He want you going now? And if you've been doing things wrong, stop it. Start doing things right. And try God and see if He isn't good just as He promises He is. And if He isn't wise just as He says He is. And if His way is not truly the best for you. Try Him. Have the courage to do it His way. God is all about rescue and redemption. There's nothing you may have messed up that He cannot repair, that He cannot heal. But you have to trust Him. Let's sing a song of invitation. While we're singing, I want to invite you to come forward. If God has laid any kind of decision on your heart, any kind of commitment He may have put on your heart, it may have something very direct to do with what we've been talking about in the sermon. It may not. Whatever God has laid on your heart, come forward. And we have people here who would like to pray with you. Steve and Patty and Charlie and Becky, could you help me with the invitation? Please come while we sing. Let's stand.